Today, I want to answer the question, how multi-passionate are you? And for those who don't know me, I'm Laura Chrisman, you personal brand coach and side hustle mentor. I'm digital strategist in the corporate world, online solopreneur, and French expatriate. I wear all the hats and I help purpose-driven professionals who want to turn their multiple interests, creativity, and knowledge into a personal brand that stands out so they can expand their career into multiple income streams. So today I want to answer the question, how multi-passionate are you? And for those who have like no idea what multi-passionate is about or just wouldn't be able to say, well, I kind of want to answer this question, and I've been mindful not to ask, are you a multi passionate, but how multi passionate you are? Because I had a couple of conversations, since I've started my coaching practice last year, and it was quite interesting when I share, obviously, when you share about your business, usually you want to answer the question, what do you do? Who you're serving for what was results? And when sharing, who I'm helping, when I say purpose driven professionals with multiple interests, actually, I had a lot of people recognizing themselves into it. And people I help are people who are very fast learners, they adapt very quickly, and they love to interconnect ideas, look at the big pictures, and they really, really, really crave for variety. For them, the brains need to go left, right brains, all interconnected, doing multiple things. That's what is bringing that fuels of ideas, creativity, innovations. So as I shared that, with conversations I had with potential clients, but not only, a lot of people would answer and tell me, oh, well, I'm like that too. And for those who perhaps came across the TED Talk Emily Whipnick created about being a multi-passionate, multi-potentialite, well, actually it's interesting because in the online space, there are so many labels or words trying to capture what it is to be a multi-passionate. You have being a polymath, a renaissance man or woman, or scanners. So you do have a lot of ways to describe why the concept itself, I think it's beyond just are you fitting in that label or not. And by the way, multi-passionate, we do hate labels. I personally hate it and I struggle so much with them to define who I am. And that's why I created a personal brand so I don't have to use those labels. And that was quite interesting for me, to see how many people recognize themselves into this variety, which made me think we might all be multi passionate in a certain way. And if you think of today, in society, we all have different interests. We are multi dimensional being because we are wearing multiple hats, either being a side hustler, we are the executive, the mom, the good friend, the tennis player, right? We have different dimensions in how we experience life. And if you think in terms of society and just the access of the internet, we have so much access to knowledge. It's never been a time when knowledge has been so accessible that our attention is being scattered or spread thin across so many media, IDs, or just places to visit. I mean, just think about how many apps do you have on your phone, right? So many different things you can do with your phone. Or how many places you might have listed in your travel lists. I don't know for you, but I have a couple of lists and spots I really want to visit. So again, I'm thinking multiple access to the world. And in terms of knowledge, I mean, how many YouTube playlists or books you like to read this year? I don't know if you have that list of wish list, want to watch. I do have that with movies, books, and YouTube videos. It's a lot. And, thinking of that access to the world, places, ideas, I think, reflecting back with those conversations I had, it's not a question of whether or not you are multi-passionate. It's not a black and white answer. Are you in or out? Not at all. I do believe it's more about being, where do you sit in a spectrum? And if you think, with the gig economy, it's never been more accessible to explore multiple things to do. Again, with the technologies or just the access of knowledge, and either to explore things just as a hobby or to transform it into a business. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask this question here is, when being multi-passionate requires you to think your career path differently then. Because if we think of a spectrum, how multi-passionate are you in that spectrum? And when you're in that high end of the spectrum, that you need to think your career outside the box. And that's what I want to share here. 3 very specific patterns, telltale sign that share and tell actually how in your career it's been showing up, and that can give you hints about, oh, I'm in that high end of the spectrum and I might need to actually think career outside the box. And I say patterns because these are things coming along the year. It's not like, oh, that's a thought I had yesterday. That's something that usually multi-passionates are experiencing over the years. It's really ingrained in their identity and who they are. And I want to share here patterns that I experience myself as well. So the first one, I like to call it the "this is the one" pattern. Because when you explore new passions or interests, you might want to start diving into one. And with a level of intensity that is like super strong, and really you're almost obsessed about it, and you have that excitement coming up, because you might wonder, is like, is this it? Did I find the one, the idea that is going to really be able to carry over for years, and I found my why, like a bit of that aha moment, and you get very excited. But at that very moment, when you get excited, there is almost a downside to it, when you realize that you might probably grow bored of it fairly quickly. It happens to me that I started a new role and I got really excited in the moment because that's something I really wanted to. But the moment I stepped into it, I knew if I were, as I say, yes, that I had a bit of a deadline to it. That is like, oh, I might enjoy it for the next couple of years and so, but I can see myself grow pretty bored of it. But almost instantly, when you actually step into it, you have that forward view of yourself, like, this is great, but I can see myself already scanning to something else. And that search of that one idea and feeling that you cannot hold into one might make you feel very flaky. Like, oh, I'm never committed that much long term. And people might say, you are flaky because of that. Those questions like, are you more of someone who likes to initiate new ideas, but can you actually follow through? Or are you scanning and dropping for something else? Second telltale sign in your career that might tell you're actually a multi-passionate and with that level of high intensity is how hard it is to pin down your strength and your unique expertise, especially when you want to capture that in one statement. When you do this exercise and you have that, ask people what they are seeing as being your biggest strength and your bigger talent. Actually, when I did this exercise, and I did it a lot, I end up with different scenarios that never, make me feel very satisfied or something I can work with, because either I've been seen as the person with many ideas. It's like, oh, there's a lot going on. Oh, Laura, she's always on up to something. She's doing stuff like so many ideas. Or I'm the one getting things done. And I'm making air quotes here because it says so much that it says nothing. And getting things done isn't a strength. It's, how people perceive you in terms of impact, but how it's been so much of a struggle is when I say getting things done is like great, but from which strength? What exactly I'm getting things done? So it seems people had this perception is like she's doing things, but we have no idea how she's doing it. She's having her own ways. What we see is at the end of the day, things are getting done. And the lack of specificities of those feedbacks really, really can be harmful or just so much of a struggle to pin down that one unique strength. If it's public speaking, is it being very active and powerful listener, right? It's not very specific that you can build something upon. And in terms of value, again, it feels that nothing really stands out, right? It's like, well, I'm getting things done, so what? How special that is. And at the end of the day, that can impact the confidence you may have to either ask for that promotion or nail an interview, because you show up like, I know my strength and I know people know my strength. Or start your own business, right? Based on ideas you have. I mean, that's something I've experienced so much myself, especially in the professional corporate space, because I fall in some instances in the scenario of the keep the good work scenario, which was pretty much the feedback. It's like, keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, great, I guess I can do that, but how do I capture with very specific words what am I doing well? And how is being perceived? What is standing out? So this pattern I found is very, very, very across the board for multi-passionates, because usually that's actually why they are very much doubting themselves or don't start a business, because like, what am I good at? I'm kind of good at multiple things, but not necessarily having the confidence to really share in one statement, this is the strength I perceived, and I feel people are perceiving as well, I have. Third patterns, third telltale sign. This one is, as you experience in your career, a very high intensity of being a multi-passionate is having very strong start and stop episodes. And here it's pretty much, if you were to describe a roller coaster with like a lot of highs but also a lot of lows. And when you explore new careers, interests, or new roles, new business opportunities, you are going all in, like all in with all your energies, because you're excited. You're excited, you want to learn everything about it and interconnect things, but that curiosity actually can be your downfall. Why? Because you can overcommit yourself in terms of energy, and at the end of the day, burn out. I don't know who has ever experienced that. Put that in the chat when you're like all in, really almost with that excitement that is carrying you over, either consuming hours of content, building a new website, creating and having this loads of downloads of inspirations, but that can be at the detriment of other areas of your life and really create a unbalanced and exhausting lifestyle, because you are so much into one area, one new interest, that you sacrifice other areas of your life. How about exercising, social life, right? Things like that might be parked completely on the side because, again, you're that all in, but at the end it's so not sustainable that you really have to stop. So you have lots of intensity of being all in, but also you have to recharge, and perhaps it's a question not only of months, that might be, a year or more, right? It's like you almost don't want to hear about that new interest you had anymore because you overdone it in a way. And I think for multi-passionates, that's a telltale sign when you feel you really have this high level of intensity, but also lows when you really feel you have to recharge for a long amount of time, and that can make you feel that you give up, or you gave up on that idea, on that new interest, and also deep inside make you believe that you don't have what it takes to create long-lasting results. So the three telltale signs are all signs that I experienced myself along my careers, either in side hustles I've done or in roles in the corporate world. And here again, it's a level of intensity. Like, where do you sit in that spectrum? How this pattern has been reoccurring over and over along your experience? Because I believe that while everyone is multi-dimensionals, wearing multiple hats, because that's life, the question here is, are you that much of a multi-passionate? How this intensity is holding you back from the career you love, and how much it feels that you have to fight yourself. Like you're fighting yourself and your own nature because you're trying to follow career advice, like general career advice. And those, I'm sure you heard about them. The first one is be good at one thing and be known as the expert of that one thing in your industry. I mean, when you're craving for variety and actually love to go from one interest to another, this one is really, really hard. And that comes down to the first pattern, right? I described this. This is it. Because when you think you grasp the one interest you really want to pursue, then if it's not actually the one you see long term, well, you might think, well, I will never be the expert. I will never be good at one thing, and I will never be able to succeed. So this one, I found it's very much the first one, the first barrier, as creating again that internal conflict with multi-passionate. The second advice is niche down to succeed in business, which kind of resonate with the first one, right? It's like be good at one thing, niche down. And in the business world, it does make sense, especially for specialists. But again, when you experience that intensity, when it comes down to having multiple interests and craving for variety and wanting to learn new things, because it's hard just to define yourself as one lane, this advice pretty much can blow any aspirations, because you just don't know where to start. It's like, what's my niche? What's that one box I fit into to start a business? So here, it's not about niching down for multi-passionate as establishing one lane, one thing, but more across a portfolio of activities than how you're niching in a way that makes sense for that specific area, that specific activities. So how it's about more prioritizing than actually niching down as choosing one label and then say, that's it, that's who I am for the rest of my life, because I'm going to commit on mastering that for years, like 10 years, 20 years. Here I'm thinking lifelong work. And the last one, the last general career advice that really bugs me a lot, because let's be honest, everyone heard it, is follow your passion, assuming there is only one, and you will never work another day of your life. I mean, this one is so enticing. I mean, let's be fair, we all want to have an impact and create work that is meaningful, and you can see here how enticing it is. But if you have to put all the pressure on finding one passion, one interest, one thing you do in your career that is going to provide happiness, purpose, impact, abundance, that's a lot. And again, here, let's be very real. Let's be very real. One passion, yes, you can find areas when you're absolutely passionate about them that really bring your soul alive. And I wish that for everyone. But it's hard work. Like, let's stop thinking for a second. It's not because you found passionate work and things you're deeply and intensively interested in that is going to be easy work. And that's the big lie. That's the big lie. And here I want to be very real and let that think in. Is yes, you can find different areas when you have this, fulfillment, and you have this energy, this thing that really wants to, just give you that energy, motivation to wake up in the morning. Great. But it's hard work because there are so many areas. For example, starting a business. Well, you might be very passionate about creating content and all the marketing behind it. Or perhaps it's about selling. You really love that interaction, or delivering your service. But when you think business, there is so many other things going on around it. And when you start, you wear all the hats. So, for example, accounting. How passionate are you about that? Perhaps not, but that's part of the work. That's part of the things you need to do. So this one, I found it, it has to be very real because, again, big lie. And I do believe millennials as a generation, we create a bit of a fantasy around that, and a lot of professionals came to found a bit of a hard truth. And for multi-passionate, you multiply that by 10 in terms of, I don't know how to figure it out, this equation: passion, happiness, never have to work another day of your life. It's like, not real. So as I share those, I want to ask you, how much resistance have you been feeling in your body, in your mind, but also in your soul as you've been trying to implement those? And again, those are connecting with the 3 patterns I shared and how they show up in your career. And here for the story, I can share a bit of me, how I experience a bit of that haha moment about, oh, that's what it's been happening. That's the telltale sign that not only I've seen in one role, one new side hustle, I don't know many business ideas, but it's been pretty much how I've been experiencing my professional life when I discover a video on YouTube, an interview of Marie Forleo when she were actually presenting her book for, I think it was an interview about her book, Everything is Figurable. And she shared how she couldn't find that one role, that one job title that will define her and her purpose. Because she shared that she loved dancing, she has career as a journalist in the media, but also creating her own business as a coach. So this one was for me is like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be one job title. I can't stop chasing for that one answer that will, create all the happiness in the world. As I found my purpose, I found that one thing, now life is great. And I was like, that has been my experience. But I've been beating myself up so far because I've been trying to apply those general career advice that do work for many, many professionals. But again, when you have that level of intensity, as you're experiencing being multi-passionate, it's almost so much internal conflict that your professional life and how they impact your life, your whole life, it's almost living an identity crisis every day. and it doesn't have to be. Because here, if we are getting super real in how those general career advice harm you and your career aspirations, they do translate in terms of how they're affecting you and your career aspiration. Because as you have this identity crisis, how does that translate? First is you have prolonged procrastination period, right? With that stop and go, at the end of the day, what comes down to it usually is I don't want to do that anymore. I know I've burned out, so no thank you. And you are going to try to think in that paralysis analysis how much, well, you can solve this equation, finding that's one thing, be good at one thing, or what are my strengths. Another, impact, another syndrome in how it impacts multi-passionates is by losing confidence in what you bring to the world. And this one is really close to my heart because you can see when I've been talking with people and clients, that moment when if you were to put all the doubts aside and just give them the permission to be not just one thing, not just one title, that's where you can see all that richness in terms of ideas, creations, and inspiration, and how much impact they want to do in the world. And that is being tuned down for so many years, and they are losing confidence of what they can bring to the world because they see themselves flaky, not having what it takes, or just completely lost. And it doesn't have to be, really. And the third one is feeling that you have to settle not showing up as your true self, and so not living your version of success. And this one is, if we're zooming back for a second, is you spend time having prolonged procrastination period, but also lost confidence of what you can bring in the world. At the end of the day, you don't live your version of what success is like for you, and you settle. You settle like, oh, it's fine. I'm going to do that job. I'm going to do that business. I'm going to do that side hustle, but not really owning it as I can see that be the reflection of who do I want to express myself, my ideas, and what impact I want to do in the world. And this is my mission, to help purpose-driven professionals who are seeing those impacts in their careers and how they're navigating their work life. Because when you're experiencing being that much, being a multi-passionate person in navigating your career, there are specific keys, there are specific strategies or views that needs to be tailored to that level of intensity. So I've been sharing quite a lot here. Hopefully that has been, helpful or resonating in somehow. I'm happy to share more. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to drop that in the chats. Let me know if this resonates. Again, comment below. And yeah, I would love to know, tell me where you're at and how being multi-passionate has been showing up for you in your career. And if you want more insights and how more, I would say, more views on how to build a personal brand you aspire so you can navigate your career without, having to leave that identity crisis, well, like this video and follow me on this account for more content like this. And in the meantime, I love to say, be you, be brave, be aspirational.